They called her Coffee Girl, like it was a career description, rather than a temporary assignment. While other airmen climbed the ranks through technical expertise and leadership roles, Technical Sergeant Madison Harper spent her days brewing espresso and arranging pastries in the executive dining facility at Edwards Air Force Base. For 14 months, she'd endured the polite condescension, the casual dismissals, the assumption that food service was the ceiling of her military capabilities. But some secrets hide in plain sight, and sometimes the most dangerous weapons aren't the ones hanging in museums or locked behind classified doors. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, wearing an apron and asking if you'd like cream with your coffee. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The pre-dawn darkness over the Mojave Desert held the kind of stillness that made sound carry for miles. Madison Harper arrived at the Falcon Club executive dining facility at 0445 hours, her footsteps echoing across the empty parking lot as she unlocked doors that led to another day of serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed beyond her utility function. Edwards Air Force Base was awakening around her, the distant whine of jet engines beginning their morning tests, the rumble of support vehicles heading to flight lines, the sharp commands of drill instructors preparing for another day of pushing boundaries in aircraft that redefined the possible. But here, in the climate-controlled sanctuary, where senior officers conducted their morning briefings over Belgian waffles and Colombian coffee, the war machine's complexity was reduced to more civilized concerns. Madison moved through her opening routine with mechanical precision, each task performed according to standards she'd learned during her first week and perfected through months of repetition. Coffee machines calibrated, pastry warmers activated, table settings arranged with military precision that would satisfy the most demanding inspection. The irony wasn't lost on her that she applied the same attention to detail here that had once characterized very different kinds of missions. The first customers began arriving at 0600 field-grade officers, whose conversations revealed more about classified programs than most security briefings ever did. Madison had learned to listen without appearing to hear, to serve without being noticed, to exist in the background of conversations that shaped operations spanning continents and involving aircraft that officially didn't exist. Colonel James Patterson entered with his usual entourage of staff officers. Their discussion focused on budget allocations for programs that required euphemisms rather than direct names. Madison prepared his regular order, double espresso, no sugar, served in the china cup he preferred over disposable alternatives, while processing information that would have been valuable to intelligence agencies whose existence couldn't be officially acknowledged. "The Nightshade program is running over budget again," Patterson was saying to his deputy, Lieutenant Colonel Susan Martinez. "Pentagon wants explanations for cost overruns that we can't provide without revealing capabilities they don't want officially documented." Madison set the coffee at Patterson's place with the invisible efficiency that had made her valuable in ways he'd never suspect. Nightshade was the code name for stealth bomber development programs that pushed technology beyond current understanding, aircraft that could penetrate enemy airspace without detection and deliver payloads with surgical precision. What Patterson didn't know was that Madison understood every technical detail he was discussing. "The pilot training pipeline is the real bottleneck," Martinez continued, consulting her tablet with frustration that suggested ongoing personnel challenges. "We need aviators who can handle aircraft systems that exist at the bleeding edge of human interface technology. Finding pilots with the right combination of technical knowledge and intuitive understanding is proving nearly impossible." Madison refilled Patterson's coffee while maintaining the fiction that she was exactly what she appeared to be, competent food service personnel whose primary concern was ensuring that senior officers received properly prepared beverages and meals. The conversation continued around her as if she were furniture, revealing information about programs that required security clearances she officially didn't possess. What none of them knew, what Madison herself was still learning to accept, was that her assignment to food service wasn't career limitation or disciplinary action. It was strategic placement designed to position her where she could monitor conversations while remaining invisible to operations that required her expertise without acknowledging it officially. The morning rush brought a steady stream of officers whose casual conversations revealed the scope of activities at Edwards Air Force Base. Test pilot evaluations, aircraft performance assessments, technical challenges that pushed engineering beyond established parameters, all of it discussed over coffee and croissants, as if the most advanced military technology in the world was routine business. Madison served them all with professional courtesy that masked her growing frustration with playing a role that felt increasingly distant from her actual capabilities. 14 months of brewing coffee and arranging fruit platters while listening to conversations about aircraft she could fly better than most of the pilots discussing them was taking its toll on her patience and professional identity. At 0730, Major General Patricia Reynolds entered the dining facility with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to immediate deference. Her reputation preceded her, youngest general in Air Force history to command a stealth aircraft program, architect of innovations that had revolutionized modern warfare, and the kind of officer who inspired both fear and admiration in equal measure. Madison prepared Reynolds' order from memory: black coffee, whole grain toast, orange juice with no ice, while observing the general's interaction with other officers. Reynolds commanded respect that went beyond rank. Her technical knowledge and operational experience with classified aircraft systems made her opinion carry weight that could reshape entire programs. The simulator results from yesterday's evaluation are disturbing, Reynolds was saying to Colonel Patterson, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd flown missions in aircraft that didn't officially exist. None of our current pilot candidates demonstrated the intuitive understanding required for nightshade operations. We're training technicians, not aviators. Madison set the general's breakfast with practiced efficiency while processing the implications of what she was hearing. Pilot evaluation for the most advanced aircraft in military history was failing to produce candidates with the skills necessary for operational deployment. The technology existed, but finding people capable of utilizing it remained an unsolved problem. "What are we looking for that we're not finding?" Patterson asked, his frustration evident in his tone. "These are our best pilots, top graduates from test pilot school, officers with sterling records and proven capabilities." Reynolds studied her coffee with the expression of someone considering problems that had no obvious solutions. Technical proficiency isn't enough for aircraft that respond to pilot intention as much as pilot input. We need aviators who can interface with systems that exist beyond normal human-machine parameters. Traditional training produces competent pilots. We need something else entirely. Madison understood exactly what General Reynolds was describing, though she couldn't acknowledge that understanding without compromising operational security that had kept her identity hidden for 14 months. The conversation was about aircraft that required capabilities most pilots would never develop, systems that demanded intuitive connection between human consciousness and technological possibility. The dining facility began to empty as officers departed for morning briefings and flight operations, leaving Madison to clean tables and prepare for the lunch service that would bring fresh conversations about programs that pushed the boundaries of human achievement. But her attention was drawn to a folder that General Reynolds had left behind, its classified markings visible even from across the room. Protocol required that she contact base security to retrieve classified materials left in unsecured areas, but curiosity about contents that might relate to conversations she'd been monitoring made her hesitate. The folder was marked with code names she recognized from previous overhead discussions: Nightshade, Ghost Protocol, and something called Project Wraith that hadn't appeared in any conversation she'd witnessed. Madison approached the folder carefully, understanding that touching classified materials could compromise her carefully maintained cover, while potentially providing information that her handlers needed to understand activities at Edwards Air Force Base. The balance between gathering intelligence and maintaining operational security required constant evaluation of risks that could expose her mission. But before she could make that decision, footsteps in the corridor announced someone's return. Madison quickly moved away from the table, busying herself with cleaning supplies while General Reynolds re-entered the dining facility with the purposeful efficiency of someone who'd realized they'd forgotten something important. "Thank you," Reynolds said, retrieving the folder with casual authority that suggested this kind of oversight was routine rather than concerning. Classified briefing materials have a way of wandering off when you're not paying attention. Madison nodded with professional courtesy while maintaining the fiction that she had no interest in or understanding of whatever the folder contained. "Of course, ma'am. Would you like fresh coffee for your meeting?" Reynolds paused, studying Madison with the kind of attention that suggested evaluation beyond routine interaction with food service personnel. "You've been working here for over a year, haven't you? I don't think we've actually been introduced." The moment carried weight that Madison couldn't fully interpret. General Reynolds was known for her memory and attention to detail, qualities that had made her successful in positions requiring absolute precision and situational awareness. Her interest in a food service worker seemed casual but felt calculated. "Technical Sergeant Madison Harper, ma'am," she replied, maintaining military courtesy while wondering why a general would bother learning the name of someone whose official duties involved coffee preparation and table service. "Harper," Reynolds repeated, her expression suggesting that the name carried significance Madison couldn't understand. "Interesting. Well, Sergeant Harper, keep up the excellent work. This facility runs more smoothly than most classified briefing rooms I've worked in." The compliment was routine, but something in Reynolds' tone suggested deeper evaluation that went beyond appreciation for properly prepared beverages. Madison had the uncomfortable feeling that she was being assessed for purposes that had nothing to do with food service capabilities. As General Reynolds departed with her classified folder, Madison was left with questions that had no obvious answers. Why had a general taken the time to learn her name? What significance did her surname carry that had prompted that moment of recognition? And why did she have the growing suspicion that her carefully maintained cover was beginning to attract exactly the kind of attention it was designed to avoid? The morning cleanup routine continued with automatic efficiency, but Madison's mind was processing interactions that suggested her assignment at Edwards Air Force Base was entering a new phase. 14 months of invisible observation were giving way to something that felt more like evaluation, as if people with clearances far above her official level were beginning to notice capabilities she'd worked hard to keep hidden. Through the dining facility's windows, she could see aircraft moving across distant runways, sleek shapes that defied conventional understanding of aerodynamics and represented the cutting edge of military aviation technology. Somewhere among those hangars were aircraft that required pilots with skills that traditional training couldn't provide, systems that demanded capabilities she possessed but couldn't acknowledge. Her secure communication device remained silent, but Madison knew that handlers were monitoring her situation through methods she couldn't detect. The conversation she'd overheard about pilot shortages for advanced aircraft programs suggested that her mission was approaching critical junctures that would require decisions about revelation versus continued concealment. Soon, circumstances would force her to choose between maintaining her cover as coffee girl and demonstrating capabilities that could only be explained through acknowledgement of qualifications that officially didn't exist in her service record. Soon, someone would notice that the woman serving coffee understood more about advanced aircraft systems than most of the pilots discussing them. Soon, Madison Harper would face the choice between remaining invisible and revealing the truth about why someone with her background was really making coffee at Edwards Air Force Base. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The officers' lounge at Edwards Air Force Base hummed with the familiar rhythm of military gossip, that peculiar blend of speculation and rumor that filled gaps between official briefings and classified operations. Captain Derek Townsend sat with his usual group of test pilots, nursing his third cup of coffee while dissecting the morning's flight evaluations. With the casual expertise that came from years of pushing experimental aircraft beyond their design limits. "You hear about the nightshade evaluations yesterday?" Townsend asked, glancing around to ensure their conversation wouldn't be overheard by personnel without appropriate clearances. 3 more washouts, best pilots in the Air Force, and they can't even complete basic interface protocols. Major Lisa Chen looked up from her flight manual, her expression carrying the frustration that had become common among aviators assigned to advanced programs. "The aircraft isn't the problem. The technology works perfectly in simulation. It's the human element that keeps failing." What none of them noticed was Madison Harper restocking the coffee station 20 feet away, her movements automatic and unobtrusive while her attention focused on every word of their conversation. 14 months of invisible service had taught her to blend into background operations while gathering intelligence that her handlers valued for reasons she couldn't fully understand. "I heard General Reynolds is considering suspending the entire pilot training program," added Lieutenant Colonel Mark Rodriguez, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd witnessed bureaucratic failures that wasted years of development and billions of dollars. "Without qualified aviators, the Nightshade fleet is just expensive hangar decoration." Madison refilled the coffee dispensers with practiced efficiency, her presence so routine that the officers continued their discussion without acknowledging her existence. The invisibility was both useful and frustrating, valuable for intelligence gathering, but corrosive to professional identity that had once been built on recognition and respect for exceptional capabilities. The interface requirements are unlike anything in conventional aviation, Chen continued, consulting notes from briefings that officially hadn't occurred. Neural synchronization with flight control systems, intuitive navigation through stealth protocols, real-time threat assessment that goes beyond normal human processing speeds. We're looking for pilots who can think like the aircraft thinks. Rodriguez laughed, but the sound carried no humor. Right, because that's a skill they teach at flight school. Advanced human-machine interface theory, right between formation flying and instrument navigation. Madison understood exactly what they were describing, though acknowledging that understanding would compromise operational security that had protected her for over a year. The Nightshade program required pilots who could interface with aircraft systems that responded to thought as much as physical control input, technology that existed at the intersection of consciousness and computational capability. Captain Townsend leaned forward conspirationally. There's a rumor going around that the whole program is based on technology that came from somewhere else. Not foreign intelligence. Something else entirely. Advanced materials, propulsion systems that violate known physics, avionics that seem almost alive. You're talking about alien technology, Chen said dismissively, though her tone suggested she'd heard similar speculation from sources that couldn't be easily discounted. Next you'll be telling me that Area 51 has been reverse engineering UFOs for decades. All I'm saying, Townsend replied carefully, is that the performance parameters for Nightshade aircraft exceed anything that conventional engineering should be able to produce. And the pilot interface requirements suggest technology that was designed for non-human operators. Madison completed her coffee service tasks and moved toward the exit, but Rodriguez's next comment stopped her in her tracks. You know what's interesting? General Reynolds has been asking questions about personnel files that aren't supposed to exist. Deep background checks on people with unofficial qualifications, looking for candidates whose actual capabilities might not match their official service records. The conversation was moving into territory that made Madison's handlers nervous, areas where operational security intersected with personnel investigation in ways that could expose assets whose existence depended on maintaining carefully constructed fictional identities. Her assignment to food service was cover for intelligence gathering, but it was also protection from exactly the kind of scrutiny that Rodriguez was describing. Chen gathered her materials and prepared to leave for afternoon flight operations. Whatever they're looking for, they better find it soon. The Pentagon is losing patience with programs that can't deliver operational capabilities. Nightshade is expensive enough to fund small countries, and if we can't put qualified pilots in those cockpits, the whole project is at risk. As the officers departed for their respective duties, Madison was left alone with information that suggested her mission was approaching critical junctures that would require decisions about revelation versus continued concealment. The pilot shortage for advanced aircraft programs wasn't just bureaucratic inefficiency. It was operational failure that threatened capabilities her handlers needed to monitor and potentially influence. Her secure communication device buzzed with an encrypted message disguised as routine administrative notification. Personnel investigation protocols activated. Maintain current assignment parameters. Avoid attention from ranking officers conducting background reviews. The warning was clear. Someone was looking for people like her, and being found could compromise everything. Madison deleted the message and returned to the dining facility, where afternoon preparations would provide cover for processing information that revealed the scope of activities at Edwards Air Force Base. The Nightshade program wasn't just developing advanced aircraft. It was attempting to create human-machine interfaces that pushed the boundaries of what pilots could accomplish through conventional training. But the technology required capabilities that few people possessed, qualifications that couldn't be officially acknowledged, without revealing programs that existed in classification levels beyond normal military oversight. General Reynolds was searching for aviators whose actual capabilities exceeded their official records, people whose true backgrounds remained hidden for operational security reasons. The afternoon briefing cycle brought fresh conversations about programs that operated in shadows deeper than Madison's intelligence mission had originally penetrated. References to Project Wraith, discussions about propulsion technologies that defied known physics, and speculation about aircraft that could operate in environments where conventional aviation was impossible. Major General Reynolds appeared in the dining facility at 1430 hours. Her arrival causing the subtle shift in atmosphere that accompanied flag officer presence. But instead of joining the usual group of senior officers for routine briefings, she approached Madison directly with purposeful attention that suggested this wasn't casual interaction. "Sergeant Harper," Reynolds said, her tone carrying authority mixed with what might have been curiosity. "I've been reviewing personnel files for our advanced programs, and your background raises some interesting questions." Madison felt her pulse quicken, while maintaining professional courtesy that masked the significance of Reynolds' inquiry. "Ma'am, I'm not sure what you mean. My service record is straightforward. Food service specialist with standard qualifications for current assignment." Reynolds studied her with the kind of attention that suggested evaluation beyond routine supervisory interaction. "Your file shows education in aerospace engineering, civilian pilot's license with instrument ratings, and technical training that seems excessive for food service operations. Care to explain that background?" The questions were direct enough to require honest responses while carefully avoiding details that might compromise operational security. Madison had rehearsed this scenario through countless preparation sessions, but reality carried weight that training couldn't fully capture. "Educational background from before military service, ma'am, private pilot training as a hobby, engineering courses that didn't lead to degree completion. Current assignment makes good use of organizational skills and attention to detail." It was true but incomplete, the kind of response that satisfied surface inquiry while avoiding information that could expose qualifications that officially didn't exist in her service record. Reynolds' expression suggested she understood the limitations of the explanation and wasn't satisfied with information that raised more questions than it resolved. "Interesting combination of skills for someone assigned to food service," Reynolds observed, her words carrying implication that Madison's assignment might not be the career limitation it appeared to be. "Have you ever considered applying for advanced training programs? The Air Force has ongoing needs for personnel with technical backgrounds and aviation experience." The offer was carefully constructed, providing opportunity for Madison to reveal capabilities while maintaining plausible deniability for recruitment that might serve purposes beyond standard personnel development. But accepting would mean transitioning from covert intelligence gathering to active participation in programs that her handlers needed to monitor from outside perspective. "Thank you for the consideration, ma'am," Madison replied carefully. "Current assignment serves my needs and allows me to contribute meaningfully to base operations." Reynolds nodded, but her expression suggested that the conversation wasn't concluded. "Well, if you ever change your mind, there are opportunities for qualified personnel in programs that require exceptional capabilities. The door is always open for airmen who possess skills that exceed their current utilization." As General Reynolds departed with her typical efficiency, Madison was left with the uncomfortable realization that her carefully maintained cover was attracting exactly the kind of attention it was designed to avoid. Personnel investigation, background reviews, and direct recruitment approaches suggested that her mission was transitioning from observation to participation in ways that could compromise everything. The secure communication device remained silent, but she knew that handlers were monitoring the situation through methods she couldn't detect. General Reynolds' interest in her background indicated that the Nightshade program's personnel problems were serious enough to warrant recruitment from unconventional sources, including food service workers whose qualifications seemed excessive for their current assignments. Evening approached with the same routine efficiency that characterized all operations at Edwards Air Force Base, but Madison understood that routine was giving way to circumstances that would test her ability to maintain cover while gathering intelligence about programs that existed at the cutting edge of military capability. Through the dining facility's windows, she could see aircraft moving across distant runways in the golden light of desert sunset, shapes that defied conventional understanding and represented technology that pushed human achievement beyond established parameters. Somewhere among those hangars were aircraft that required pilots with capabilities she possessed but couldn't acknowledge. Her handlers had positioned her to monitor these operations, but monitoring was becoming participation as General Reynolds' recruitment efforts focused on finding aviators whose actual qualifications exceeded their official service records. Soon, Madison would face choices between maintaining her cover and revealing capabilities that could serve both her intelligence mission and the operational requirements of programs that officially didn't exist. The balance was shifting, and the woman who'd spent 14 months serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed was about to discover that some secrets were too valuable to remain hidden when lives depended on capabilities that only existed in the shadows. The restricted section of Edwards Air Force Base stretched across the desert like a classified city, its hangars and testing facilities hidden behind security barriers that most base personnel would never see beyond. Madison Harper had been summoned here by Major General Reynolds for what was described as routine security evaluation. But nothing about the morning felt routine as she passed through multiple checkpoints that verified clearances she officially didn't possess. Her escort, Master Sergeant Angela Torres, maintained professional courtesy while guiding Madison through corridors that seemed to exist in a different reality from the rest of the base. The walls displayed no unit insignia, no mission statements, no indication of what activities occurred behind doors marked only with alphanumeric codes that meant nothing to unauthorized personnel. "First time in the black section?" Torres asked, using military slang for areas where classified programs operated beyond normal oversight. Her tone was carefully neutral, but Madison detected evaluation in the question, assessment of how she responded to environments that officially didn't exist. "Yes, Sergeant," Madison replied, maintaining the fiction that she was exactly what she appeared to be, food service personnel whose security clearance barely extended beyond the dining facility where she worked. The truth was that she'd operated in similar facilities before, but acknowledging that experience would compromise operational security that had protected her for 14 months. They entered a briefing room that looked like something from science fiction rather than military reality. The walls displayed holographic projections of aircraft that defied conventional understanding of aerodynamics, their sleek forms seeming to bend light around themselves in ways that suggested technology beyond current human achievement. At the center of the room sat Major General Reynolds, surrounded by technical displays that revealed the scope of programs Madison had only heard referenced in whispered conversations. "Sergeant Harper," Reynolds said, gesturing toward a chair positioned where the holographic displays would be clearly visible. "Thank you for coming. I hope you'll find this conversation educational." Madison took the indicated seat while processing the significance of being shown technology that required clearances far above her official level. The holographs revealed aircraft that looked more like weapons than transportation, their angular surfaces and impossible geometries suggesting capabilities that pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering. "What you're seeing," Reynolds continued, activating controls that cause the displays to rotate and reveal internal systems, represents 15 years of development in aircraft technology that officially doesn't exist. The Nightshade program has produced vehicles capable of speeds approaching Mach 6, stealth characteristics that render them invisible to all known detection methods, and payload capacities that could reshape modern warfare. Madison studied the technical specifications that accompanied the holographic displays, understanding immediately that she was looking at technology that went beyond anything conventional military development should have produced. The propulsion systems defied known physics. The materials science suggested manufacturing processes that didn't officially exist, and the avionics indicated computational capabilities that exceeded current understanding of artificial intelligence. "The problem," Reynolds continued, her tone carrying frustration that had been building for months, "is that we can't find pilots qualified to operate these systems. The human-machine interface requires capabilities that traditional training doesn't develop. We need aviators who can think in 3 dimensions while processing information at superhuman speeds, who can interface with computer systems that respond to intention as much as input." Torres activated additional displays that showed pilot evaluation results from the past 6 months, test scores, simulation performance, psychological assessments that revealed the scope of failure among candidates who represented the best military aviation had to offer. Every metric indicated that conventional training produced competent pilots, but Nightshade required something beyond competence. "The aircraft systems," Reynolds explained, highlighting interface displays that looked more like neural networks than control panels, were designed for operators whose cognitive processes differ from normal human parameters. "We're beginning to suspect that successful pilots will need capabilities that can't be taught through conventional methods." Madison understood exactly what Reynolds was describing, though acknowledging that understanding would reveal qualifications that couldn't be explained through food service training. The Nightshade program had been designed for pilots who possessed intuitive understanding of technology that operated beyond normal human-machine interface parameters. "Sergeant Harper," Reynolds said, her attention focusing directly on Madison with intensity that suggested this conversation was moving toward its actual purpose. "Your personnel file contains discrepancies that suggest capabilities beyond your current assignment. Educational background in aerospace engineering, civilian pilot ratings that exceed hobby-level qualifications, and technical training that seems designed for advanced applications. The evaluation was becoming recruitment, but Madison couldn't determine whether Reynolds was offering opportunity or conducting investigation that could compromise everything. Her handlers' warnings about background reviews made this conversation dangerous territory where wrong answers could expose operations that extended far beyond Edwards Air Force Base. "Ma'am, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not sure how my background relates to advanced aircraft programs," Madison replied carefully. "My qualifications are straightforward: technical education that didn't lead to career application, pilot training as personal interest, current assignment that makes good use of organizational skills." Reynolds studied her response with the attention of someone who understood the difference between official statements and actual truth. "What if I told you that we're considering unorthodox recruitment approaches for programs that require exceptional capabilities? Personnel whose actual qualifications might exceed their official service records." The question was direct enough to require decision about revelation versus continued concealment. Madison's mission involved monitoring activities at Edwards Air Force Base, but participating in those activities would provide access to information that external observation couldn't gather. The balance between intelligence gathering and operational security was shifting towards circumstances that required adaptation rather than rigid adherence to original parameters. Torres activated new displays that showed test protocols for pilot evaluation, simulation scenarios that challenged spatial awareness, reaction times, and cognitive processing at levels that exceeded normal human capability. The tests were designed to identify candidates who possessed natural abilities rather than trained skills, people whose neural architecture supported capabilities that couldn't be developed through conventional instruction. These evaluations, Reynolds continued, are screening tools for identifying personnel who can interface with technology that was designed for operators whose consciousness works differently from normal parameters. We're not looking for better pilots. We're looking for people who can become something more than pilots. Madison realized that she was being offered the opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that would end her intelligence mission while potentially providing access to programs that her handlers needed to understand. The choice was between maintaining cover that was becoming increasingly difficult to sustain and revealing qualifications that could serve both operational requirements and intelligence-gathering objectives. What would participation involve, she asked, deciding that careful inquiry was less risky than continued denial of obvious interest in her background. Reynolds smiled with satisfaction that suggested Madison's question had been the response she'd been hoping to hear. Initial evaluation through simulation protocols that assess cognitive compatibility with advanced aircraft systems. If you demonstrate the required capabilities, advanced training and techniques that don't appear in any manual. Torres handed Madison a tablet displaying consent forms and security agreements that would formalize her participation in programs that officially didn't exist. The documentation was thorough enough to suggest that this recruitment wasn't an improvised decision but carefully planned approach to personnel whose backgrounds suggested hidden qualifications. The evaluation process, Reynolds explained, involves interfacing with systems that respond to thought as much as physical input. Successful candidates demonstrate intuitive understanding of technology that seems almost alive, aircraft that respond to pilot intention in ways that conventional training can't explain. Madison studied the consent forms while processing the implications of formal participation in activities she'd been monitoring covertly. Signing would end her intelligence mission but might provide access to information that external observation couldn't gather. The decision required weighing immediate operational security against long-term intelligence objectives that extended beyond her individual assignment. "Ma'am, this is a significant decision that affects my career trajectory and personal goals," she said, using bureaucratic language to request time for consideration while actually needing consultation with handlers who couldn't be contacted through normal channels. "Could I have time to review the materials and provide a response tomorrow?" Reynolds nodded with understanding that suggested she appreciated the magnitude of what she was requesting. "Of course. But I should mention that time constraints may limit how long this opportunity remains available. The Nightshade program needs qualified pilots within the next few weeks, or funding authorization may be redirected to programs that can demonstrate operational readiness." As Madison departed the restricted section with Torres as escort, she carried documentation that represented transition from observer to participant in programs that existed at the cutting edge of military capability. The tablet contained technical specifications for aircraft that challenged understanding of physics, evaluation protocols that tested capabilities most people didn't possess, and training programs that would reveal whether she could interface with technology that seemed designed for something beyond human operation. Her secure communication device remained silent, but she knew that handlers were monitoring the situation through methods that wouldn't be apparent to General Reynolds or her staff. The recruitment offer represented opportunity and threat in equal measure. Access to information that intelligence services valued, balanced against exposure that could compromise operations, spanning multiple theaters and involving personnel whose existence couldn't be officially acknowledged. That evening, as Madison reviewed the consent forms and technical documentation in her quarters, she understood that 14 months of serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed was ending. Tomorrow, she would face choices between maintaining cover that had become unsustainable and revealing capabilities that could reshape everything: her mission, her identity, and potentially the balance of global military power. Hey, the Nightshade program needed pilots who could interface with technology that existed beyond normal human-machine parameters. Madison Harper possessed exactly those capabilities, but demonstrating them would end the intelligence mission that had brought her to Edwards Air Force Base, while beginning something that neither she nor her handlers had fully anticipated. Some secrets were too valuable to remain hidden when lives depended on capabilities that existed only in the shadows between official acknowledgement and operational necessity. The simulation chamber at Edwards Air Force Base existed in a realm between reality and impossibility, its walls lined with technology that created environments indistinguishable from actual flight while testing capabilities that few humans possessed. Madison Harper stood before the entrance at 0600 hours, having spent a sleepless night wrestling with decisions that would reshape everything about her mission and identity. Her secure communication device had finally buzzed with guidance from handlers who'd monitored her recruitment into the Nightshade program. Participate in evaluation. Intelligence value of program access exceeds operational security concerns. Maintain cover story but demonstrate sufficient capability to gain program entry. The message had been clear. Her intelligence mission was evolving from observation to active participation in activities that officially didn't exist. Master Sergeant Torres greeted her with professional courtesy that couldn't mask the significance of what was about to occur. "Morning, Sergeant Harper. Ready to find out what you're really capable of?" The question carried weight beyond casual inquiry, suggesting that Torres understood more about Madison's background than official records would indicate. Her handlers had warned that personnel within classified programs often possessed intelligence about assets whose existence couldn't be officially acknowledged, creating situations where cover stories intersected with operational reality in unpredictable ways. "As ready as anyone can be for something they've never experienced," Madison replied, maintaining the fiction that she was food service personnel whose qualifications were limited to civilian pilot training and engineering coursework that hadn't led to practical application. They entered the simulation chamber, where Major General Reynolds waited beside control systems that looked more like spacecraft interfaces than conventional flight simulators. The technology was clearly beyond anything that normal military development should have produced. Holographic displays, neural interface equipment, and computational systems that seemed to anticipate operator needs before inputs were provided. "This morning's evaluation," Reynolds explained, activating displays that showed three-dimensional flight environments of impossible complexity, "will test your ability to interface with systems that respond to thought patterns as much as physical control inputs. The Nightshade aircraft requires pilots who can process information at superhuman speeds while maintaining spatial awareness in environments where normal navigation is impossible." Madison approached the simulator cockpit, noting immediately that the controls bore no resemblance to conventional aircraft interfaces. Instead of traditional stick and rudder systems, the pilot position featured neural interface headsets, haptic feedback gloves, and display screens that seemed to respond to eye movement and attention focus rather than direct manipulation. The key, Torres added, helping Madison configure the interface equipment, is not to think about flying in traditional terms. These systems respond to intention and visualization rather than mechanical input. Successful candidates describe the experience as becoming one with the aircraft rather than operating it. Reynolds activated the simulation, and Madison found herself experiencing flight in ways that transcended anything conventional aviation could provide. The virtual environment was a complex three-dimensional maze of obstacles, threats, and navigational challenges that required processing multiple data streams simultaneously while maintaining precise control over aircraft systems that responded to her thoughts as much as her physical inputs. But what surprised Madison most was how natural the interface felt. Where other candidates had struggled with technology that seemed designed for non-human operators, she found herself adapting immediately to systems that anticipated her needs and responded to intentions she'd barely formed. The Nightshade simulator felt less like operating a machine and more like extending her consciousness into a realm where thought became action. "Remarkable," Reynolds murmured, monitoring Madison's performance through displays that revealed neural activity, reaction times, and system interface efficiency. "Your adaptation rate is unlike anything we've seen from previous candidates. Most pilots require weeks of training to achieve the integration you're demonstrating on first exposure." Madison navigated the simulation challenges with fluidity that felt almost automatic, her consciousness merging with aircraft systems in ways that suggested the technology had been specifically designed for operators who possessed her particular cognitive architecture. The experience was simultaneously familiar and revolutionary, like discovering abilities she'd always possessed but never had opportunity to utilize. The first scenario involves stealth infiltration through enemy airspace that bristled with detection systems and defensive measures. Madison found herself processing threat information at superhuman speeds, calculating flight paths that kept the virtual aircraft invisible, while navigating terrain that challenged every conventional understanding of aerodynamics and physics. "Your stealth management is exceptional," Torres observed, reviewing data that showed Madison's ability to maintain invisibility while executing maneuvers that would expose conventional aircraft to detection. "The neural interface shows integration levels that we've never recorded from human operators." But Madison was beginning to understand that the technology wasn't entirely human in origin. The interface systems responded to thought patterns in ways that suggested they'd been designed for operators whose consciousness worked differently from normal human parameters. Her ability to adapt to the technology indicated compatibility that went beyond training or natural talent. The second scenario tested combat capabilities in environments where enemy forces possessed technology that matched or exceeded Nightshade specifications. Madison found herself engaged in aerial combat that operated at speeds and energy levels that should have overwhelmed human cognitive processing, but the neural interface allowed her to think and react at machine-like speeds while maintaining human intuition and creativity. "Combat performance is extraordinary," Reynolds said, her voice carrying amazement that couldn't be professionally concealed. "You're processing threat assessment, target acquisition, and weapons deployment at levels that our best test pilots achieved only after months of specialized training." Madison realized that she was demonstrating capabilities that her handlers had never fully explained, qualifications that went beyond anything conventional military training could provide. Her assignment to food service had been cover for intelligence gathering, but it had also been positioning for recruitment into programs that required abilities she was only beginning to understand she possessed. The final scenario involved rescue operations in impossible environments, navigating through terrain that conventional aircraft couldn't reach while extracting personnel from situations that challenged every parameter of feasible mission profiles. Madison found herself executing precision flying that existed at the intersection of physics and impossibility, using aircraft capabilities that seemed to bend reality around operational requirements. Mission completion successful. The simulation announced as virtual environments dissolved into holographic displays showing performance metrics that exceeded every benchmark previously established. Pilot demonstrates exceptional compatibility with advanced interface protocols. Reynolds reviewed the data with expression that mixed satisfaction and concern, her evaluation suggesting that Madison's capabilities raised questions about background and training that official records couldn't explain. "Sergeant Harper, your performance indicates qualifications that go far beyond civilian pilot training and engineering coursework. Care to explain how you developed these particular skills?" The moment Madison had been preparing for throughout her intelligence mission had arrived. The choice between maintaining cover that had become unsustainable and revealing capabilities that could serve both operational requirements and intelligence-gathering objectives that extended beyond her individual assignment. "Ma'am, I'm not entirely sure myself," she replied carefully, using partial truth to avoid complete revelation while acknowledging that her capabilities exceeded official documentation. "Some of the interface techniques felt familiar, but I can't explain why conventional aircraft systems never provided the same level of integration." Torres consulted displays that showed neural activity patterns during the simulation, her expression suggesting recognition of data that matched profiles from sources she couldn't officially acknowledge. General, these readings indicate cognitive architecture that we've only seen in candidates who've been exposed to advanced interface technology before. Either she has natural capabilities that match our requirements, or she's had training that doesn't appear in any accessible records. Reynolds nodded with understanding that went beyond routine personnel evaluation. Sergeant Harper, regardless of how you developed these capabilities, you've demonstrated compatibility with technology that requires the highest levels of security clearance and operational discretion. Are you prepared to commit to assignment that would involve responsibilities far beyond anything in your current experience? Madison understood that accepting would end her intelligence mission while beginning participation in programs that existed at the cutting edge of military capability. But her handler's guidance had been clear. Intelligence value of program access exceeded operational security concerns, and demonstrating sufficient capability to gain entry was authorized regardless of cover story complications. Ma'am, if the Air Force has need for my capabilities, I'm prepared to serve where I can contribute most effectively to mission success. Reynolds smiled with satisfaction that suggested Madison's response had completed recruitment process that had been ongoing longer than she'd realized. Excellent. Welcome to the Nightshade program, Lieutenant Harper. The promotion was immediate and official, reflected in orders that appeared on displays before Madison had fully processed what was happening. Her assignment to food service was ending, replaced by classification levels that would provide access to programs that officially didn't exist, while serving intelligence objectives that her handlers had been pursuing since her original assignment to Edwards Air Force Base. But she was also beginning to understand that her recruitment into Nightshade wasn't coincidental. Her capabilities, her assignment, and her demonstrated compatibility with technology that seemed designed for non-human operators suggested coordination between organizations that officially didn't communicate, while actually serving common strategic objectives that extended far beyond individual missions or programs. The simulation chamber fell silent as Madison processed the magnitude of what had just occurred. 14 months of serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed was ending, replaced by responsibilities that would test capabilities she was only beginning to understand she possessed. Tomorrow, she would begin training on aircraft that challenged every understanding of physics and engineering, serving objectives that existed in shadows deeper than her intelligence mission had originally penetrated. The classified briefing room deep within Edwards Air Force Base hummed with electronics that ensured conversations couldn't be intercepted by surveillance methods known to foreign intelligence services. Lieutenant Madison Harper, her promotion still feeling surreal after 14 months as coffee girl, sat across from Major General Reynolds and a man whose presence changed everything about her understanding of the Nightshade program. Dr. James Kessler wore civilian clothes but carried himself with authority that suggested government service at classification levels that officially didn't exist. His introduction had been deliberately vague. Special advisor to programs involving advanced technology integration. But Madison's intelligence training allowed her to read between lines of bureaucratic language, recognizing someone whose work existed in spaces between official acknowledgement and operational necessity. Lieutenant Harper, Dr. Kessler began, consulting files that contained information she'd never seen reflected in any military database. Your performance in yesterday's simulation raised questions that require answers before we proceed with advanced training protocols. Your compatibility with neural interface systems suggests exposure to technology that doesn't appear in your official service record. Madison felt familiar tension of maintaining cover stories that were becoming increasingly difficult to sustain. Her handlers had authorized participation in the Nightshade program, but they hadn't prepared her for investigation that might expose intelligence operations extending far beyond Edwards Air Force Base. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean," she replied carefully. The simulation felt intuitive, but I assumed that was natural aptitude rather than previous experience with similar systems. Reynolds activated displays that showed neural activity patterns from Madison's evaluation, brain scans that revealed cognitive architecture matching profiles from sources she couldn't officially acknowledge. These readings indicate neural pathways that typically develop only through extended exposure to advanced interface technology. Either you possess extremely rare natural capabilities, or you've had training that doesn't exist in any accessible records. Dr. Kessler leaned forward with attention that suggested evaluation beyond routine security clearance verification. "Lieutenant, the technology you interfaced with yesterday wasn't entirely developed through conventional human engineering. The neural interface systems incorporate materials and computational architectures that were acquired through unconventional means. The statement was carefully constructed to avoid direct admission, while clearly implying that nightshade technology had origins beyond normal military development. Madison understood that she was being read into information about programs that existed at classification levels where traditional oversight mechanisms didn't apply. What Dr. Kessler is explaining, Reynolds continued, is that the Nightshade aircraft incorporate technology recovered from sources that can't be officially acknowledged. The neural interface systems were reverse engineered from materials that demonstrate engineering principles beyond current human capability. Madison processed the implications while maintaining professional composure that masked her growing understanding of why her assignment to Edwards Air Force Base had been strategically valuable. Her handlers had positioned her to monitor activities involving technology that officially didn't exist, capabilities that challenged every assumption about the boundaries of human achievement. The interesting aspect of your evaluation, Dr. Kessler added, consulting technical data that showed Madison's compatibility with systems that had defeated every previous candidate, is that your neural architecture matches optimization patterns found in the recovered technology, as if your cognitive processing was specifically designed to interface with these particular systems. The revelation hit Madison like physical impact. Her exceptional performance with Nightshade technology wasn't natural talent or hidden training. It was compatibility with systems that seemed designed for operators whose consciousness worked differently from normal human parameters. But that compatibility raised questions about her background that could expose operations her handlers couldn't acknowledge. Reynolds activated new displays showing technical specifications for aircraft that challenged every understanding of physics and engineering. The Nightshade fleet represents 15 years of reverse engineering technology that operates according to principles we don't fully understand. Propulsion systems that seem to manipulate space-time, materials that change properties based on operator intention, avionics that respond to thought patterns in ways that suggest artificial consciousness. Madison studied the technical data while processing the significance of being shown information that revealed the scope of programs operating beyond normal military oversight. The aircraft specifications described capabilities that went far beyond anything conventional engineering could produce, technology that seemed almost alive in its responsiveness to pilot interface. Your compatibility with these systems, Dr. Kessler continued, suggests either unprecedented natural ability or exposure to similar technology through channels that don't appear in official records. Given the security implications involved, we need complete honesty about your background and qualifications. The moment Madison had been trained to avoid throughout her intelligence mission was arriving. Direct interrogation about capabilities that couldn't be explained without revealing operations that existed in classification levels beyond normal military authority. Her handlers' authorization to participate in Nightshade had included guidance about maintaining operational security, but it hadn't addressed investigation that might expose assets whose existence couldn't be officially acknowledged. "Sir, my background is exactly what appears in my service record," she said, using partial truth to avoid complete revelation while understanding that continued denial might compromise her access to programs that served intelligence objectives extending beyond her individual mission. If I demonstrated unusual compatibility with the simulation systems, I can only assume that's natural aptitude rather than previous experience. Dr. Kessler exchanged glances with Reynolds, their expressions suggesting shared knowledge about Madison's background that exceeded what normal security clearance verification would provide. "Lieutenant, we're aware that certain personnel are assigned to monitoring duties that don't appear in official documentation. Intelligence gathering that serves oversight objectives for programs operating beyond a normal congressional review." The statement was direct acknowledgement that Madison's intelligence mission was known to people within the Nightshade program, suggesting coordination between organizations that officially didn't communicate while actually serving common strategic objectives. Her cover as food service personnel had been transparent to authorities who possessed clearances exceeding her official level. "What we're proposing," Reynolds continued, "is arrangement that serves both your original mission parameters and our operational requirements. Participation in Nightshade provides access to information that external observation couldn't gather, while your demonstrated capabilities address personnel shortages that threaten program viability." Madison realized that she was being offered intelligence asset positioning within classified programs rather than simple recruitment for pilot training. Her handlers' authorization to participate had anticipated this development, understanding that monitoring activities required insider access to technology and operations that existed beyond normal oversight mechanisms. The question, Dr. Kessler added, is whether you're prepared to serve dual objectives: operational pilot for missions requiring exceptional capabilities, and intelligence asset for oversight authorities who need information about programs that officially don't exist. The offer was elegant in its complexity, allowing Madison to continue intelligence gathering while participating in operations that would test capabilities she was only beginning to understand she possessed. But it also meant abandoning the fiction that she was anything other than trained intelligence operative, whose assignment to Edwards Air Force Base had been strategic placement rather than routine personnel management. "Sir, if my capabilities can serve both mission requirements and oversight objectives, I'm prepared to accept responsibilities that extend beyond normal pilot duties," she replied, understanding that acceptance would transition her from covert observer to active participant in programs that existed at the intersection of technology and impossibility. Reynolds smiled with satisfaction that suggested Madison's response had completed recruitment process that had been ongoing since her original assignment to food service duties. "Excellent. Your first operational briefing is scheduled for 0800 tomorrow. Pack for extended deployment. Nightshade missions don't typically operate from conventional bases or follow predictable schedules." Dr. Kessler gathered his classified materials while providing final guidance that revealed the scope of what Madison was committing to. "Lieutenant, the technology you'll be operating challenges every assumption about the boundaries of human achievement. The missions you'll undertake exist in environments where conventional physics don't apply, and enemy capabilities exceed anything that normal military training prepares pilots to encounter." As the briefing concluded and Madison prepared to depart for quarters that would be her last night at Edwards Air Force Base, she understood that 14 months of serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed had been preparation for responsibilities that would test every capability she possessed while serving objectives that extended far beyond individual missions or programs. Her secure communication device remained silent, but she knew that handlers were monitoring the situation through methods that wouldn't be apparent to General Reynolds or Dr. Kessler. Her transition from intelligence asset to operational pilot represented evolution of mission parameters that had been anticipated since her original assignment, positioning her where she could gather information about programs that existed beyond normal oversight while participating in operations that officially didn't exist. Tomorrow would begin training on aircraft that operated according to principles that challenged human understanding, serving missions that would take her into environments where the impossible became routine, and where her capabilities would be tested against threats that existed beyond anything conventional military forces were equipped to handle. The briefing room fell silent as each participant contemplated implications of decisions that had reshaped Madison's assignment while potentially affecting operations, spanning continents, and involving technology that pushed the boundaries of human achievement into realms that officially couldn't be acknowledged. She was no longer Lieutenant Harper, who'd been promoted from coffee service. She was becoming something else entirely. An operational pilot whose capabilities would serve missions requiring interface with technology that seemed designed for consciousness that transcended normal human parameters, operating in service of objectives that existed in shadows deeper than any intelligence mission had originally anticipated. The truth about the Nightshade program was more extraordinary than anything her handlers had prepared her to discover, and her role in that program would test not just her piloting skills but her understanding of what it meant to be human in an age where the boundaries between consciousness and technology were dissolving in ways that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality itself. The hangar at Area 52, a facility that didn't appear on any public maps, stretched across the Nevada desert like a cathedral dedicated to impossible engineering. Lieutenant Madison Harper stood before her first Nightshade aircraft at 0530 hours, understanding that everything she'd experienced during simulation training was about to become reality that challenged every assumption about the boundaries of human achievement. The aircraft defied description in conventional terms. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating shadows that bent in directions that physics shouldn't allow. The angular geometry suggested aerodynamics that operated according to principles beyond current scientific understanding, while the complete absence of visible engines raised questions about propulsion systems that had been reverse-engineered from technology humanity hadn't developed. Chief Master Sergeant Diana Walsh approached with the confident stride of someone who'd spent 15 years maintaining aircraft that officially didn't exist. Her security clearance exceeded that of most generals, and her technical knowledge of Nightshade systems made her invaluable to programs that operated beyond normal military oversight. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Walsh said, running her hand along the aircraft's surface with reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. "Nightshade 7 is the most advanced vehicle in our fleet. Neural interface systems that respond to thought patterns. Propulsion technology that manipulates space-time relationships. Defensive capabilities that make conventional stealth look primitive." Madison studied the aircraft's specifications on a tablet that required biometric authentication just to activate. The technical data described capabilities that challenged every understanding of physics and engineering. Maximum velocity approaching significant fractions of light speed. Operational ceiling that extended beyond Earth's atmosphere. Payload capacity that could deliver precision strikes anywhere on the planet within minutes of mission authorization. "The pre-flight checklist," Walsh continued, handing Madison neural interface equipment that looked more like medical devices than aviation gear, "involves establishing psychological connection with aircraft consciousness rather than checking mechanical systems. These vehicles think as much as they fly, and successful pilots learn to communicate with technology that operates beyond normal human-machine interface parameters." Madison donned the neural interface headset, immediately feeling the subtle electrical activity that indicated connection with computational systems that seemed almost alive in their responsiveness. The aircraft's consciousness, she found herself thinking of it as consciousness rather than artificial intelligence, touched her awareness with curiosity that felt distinctly non-human but not unfriendly. Neural synchronization established, reported the hangar's technical systems, automated voices that monitored interface parameters during pilot preparation. Cognitive compatibility optimal, aircraft systems responding to operator presence. Walsh monitored displays that showed brain activity, neural pathway activation, and integration patterns that revealed the depth of Madison's connection with technology that had defeated every previous pilot candidate. "Your synchronization rate is extraordinary. Most pilots require weeks of gradual interface training to achieve the integration you're demonstrating on first contact." But Madison was experiencing something beyond technical interface. She was becoming aware of the aircraft's perspective on reality, consciousness that perceived dimensions and energy patterns that human senses couldn't detect. The Nightshade vehicle saw the world through sensors that operated beyond electromagnetic spectrum limitations, processing information about space-time relationships and quantum field fluctuations that conventional physics barely acknowledged. "Pre-flight complete," Madison announced, though the statement felt inadequate to describe communion with consciousness that existed at the intersection of technology and something approaching telepathy. Aircraft systems nominal, neural interface stable, mission parameters confirmed. Major General Reynolds observed from the control tower that oversaw operations at Area 52, her expression mixing satisfaction and concern, as she watched Madison prepare for flight in aircraft that had killed 3 previous pilots who'd attempted to interface with systems designed for non-human operators. The neural feedback from unsuccessful connections had caused permanent psychological damage, suggesting that compatibility with Nightshade technology required cognitive architecture that few humans possessed. "NIGHT SHADE-7, you are cleared for initial flight evaluation," Reynolds announced through communication systems that transmitted directly to Madison's neural interface rather than conventional radio equipment. Flight profile includes atmospheric testing, suborbital demonstration, and return to base. Any signs of cognitive stress or system incompatibility, abort mission immediately. Madison sealed the aircraft's canopy, feeling the subtle shift in atmospheric pressure, as environmental systems activated and began providing life support that would function in vacuum as easily as breathable atmosphere. The Nightshade cockpit contained no conventional flight controls. Instead, pilot interface occurred through thought patterns that were translated into aircraft response through technology that seemed to anticipate her intentions before she'd fully formed them. Beginning engine startup sequence, she reported, though the process bore no resemblance to conventional aircraft ignition procedures. Instead of mechanical systems spooling to operational speed, the Nightshade's propulsion activated through what could only be described as an act of will, consciousness merging with technology that responded to intention rather than physical input. The aircraft lifted from the hangar floor without sound or visible thrust, rising through air that seemed to part around its passage rather than flowing over conventional aerodynamic surfaces. Madison felt the sensation of weightlessness combined with perfect control, as if gravity had become optional rather than inevitable physical law. Atmospheric flight parameters nominal, she reported, though words felt inadequate to describe the experience of piloting vehicle that moved through space according to principles that conventional physics couldn't explain. Neural interface stable, aircraft responding to thought patterns with precision that exceed simulation expectations. Reynolds monitored flight telemetry that showed performance characteristics beyond anything that normal engineering should have produced. The Nightshade aircraft was maintaining impossible flight profiles while registering zero heat signature, minimal electromagnetic emissions, and acoustic properties that rendered it essentially invisible to all known detection methods. Initiate suborbital demonstration, Reynolds commanded, authorizing flight profile that would test both aircraft capabilities and Madison's ability to interface with technology that operated beyond Earth's atmosphere in environments where conventional aircraft couldn't function. Madison directed the aircraft upward through mental commands that felt as natural as moving her own body, consciousness merging with vehicle systems that responded to her intentions with precision that suggested true telepathic interface. The sensation was simultaneously familiar and revolutionary, like discovering abilities she'd always possessed but never had opportunity to utilize. At 100,000 feet altitude, conventional physics began giving way to operational parameters that challenged every assumption about atmospheric flight. The Nightshade aircraft continued climbing through air too thin to support normal aerodynamics, its propulsion system functioning according to principles that seemed to manipulate fundamental forces rather than rely on conventional thrust and lift relationships. Suborbital altitude achieved, Madison reported as Earth curved away beneath the aircraft and stars became visible in daylight sky that had grown black beyond atmosphere's protection. Aircraft performance nominal. Life support systems optimal. Neural interface maintaining stable connection despite environmental parameters that exceed normal human experience. But what amazed Madison most was how natural the experience felt, as if she'd been designed for exactly this kind of operation. The neural interface allowed her to perceive space-time relationships and energy patterns that human consciousness normally couldn't process, expanding her awareness beyond normal sensory limitations into realms where thought became action and intention shaped reality. Initiating return profile, she announced, beginning descent that would test the aircraft's ability to re-enter atmosphere while maintaining stealth characteristics that rendered it invisible to ground-based observation. The Nightshade's heat shielding activated through principles that seemed to violate thermodynamic laws, absorbing re-entry energy that should have destroyed any conventional vehicle. The landing at Area 52 occurred with precision that would have been impossible using conventional flight controls, the aircraft touching down as gently as falling leaves despite having just completed maneuvers that challenged every boundary of atmospheric flight. Madison sealed the neural interface systems and opened the canopy, returning to normal consciousness after experiencing reality from perspectives that transcended human limitations. Chief Walsh approached with expression that mixed amazement and professional evaluation. "How do you feel?" Most pilots experience significant disorientation after first neural interface exposure. Cognitive strain, sensory confusion, difficulty processing normal consciousness after expanded awareness connection. Madison considered the question while processing what she'd just experienced. "I feel complete. Like I've been operating with artificial limitations that the aircraft helped me transcend." The neural interface didn't feel foreign. It felt like remembering abilities I'd forgotten I possessed. General Reynolds descended from the control tower with satisfaction that suggested Madison's performance had exceeded every expectation while raising new questions about her background and capabilities. "Outstanding flight demonstration, Lieutenant. Your interface with Nightshade technology suggests compatibility that we've never recorded from human operators." But Reynolds' expression also carried concern that went beyond routine pilot evaluation. Madison's natural ability to interface with technology that had killed previous candidates suggested qualifications that couldn't be explained through conventional training or natural talent. Her neural architecture seemed specifically designed for systems that operated beyond normal human-machine interface parameters. "Dr. Kessler wants to debrief immediately," Reynolds continued, consulting orders that had arrived during Madison's flight. "Your performance today confirmed capabilities that require briefing on mission parameters extending far beyond aircraft evaluation." You'll be departing for operational deployment within 48 hours. As Madison walked away from the Nightshade aircraft that had responded to her consciousness like extension of her own body, she understood that her transition from coffee girl to operational pilot was complete. But she was also beginning to realize that her compatibility with technology that seemed designed for non-human operators raised questions about her own nature that neither she nor her handlers had fully anticipated. The neural interface had revealed abilities that transcended normal human limitations, suggesting that her assignment to monitor classified programs had positioned her for purposes that extended beyond intelligence gathering into realms where the boundaries between consciousness and technology dissolved in ways that challenged every assumption about what it meant to be human. Tomorrow would bring briefings on missions that would test capabilities she was only beginning to understand she possessed, operations that would take her into environments where the impossible became routine, and where her unique interface with alien technology would serve objectives that existed beyond anything her intelligence training had prepared her to comprehend. The secure briefing facility beneath Area 52 hummed with technology that existed at the intersection of human engineering and something far more advanced. Lieutenant Madison Harper sat before holographic displays that showed global threat assessments, enemy capabilities that exceeded conventional military understanding, and mission parameters that would test every capability she'd demonstrated during Nightshade training. Dr. Kessler activated classified presentations that revealed the scope of threats requiring intervention by pilots who could interface with technology that operated beyond normal human limitations. "The situation we're facing," he began, "involves hostile forces that have acquired similar technology to our Nightshade program. Foreign intelligence services have successfully reverse-engineered recovered materials, creating aircraft that pose existential threats to global security. Major General Reynolds consulted intelligence reports that painted a picture of adversaries whose capabilities had suddenly leaped beyond anything conventional military forces could counter. Satellite reconnaissance indicates that enemy stealth aircraft are conducting operations in airspace that should be impossible to penetrate. Their technology appears to match or exceed our Nightshade specifications in several key areas." Madison studied tactical assessments that described enemy capabilities in terms that challenged every assumption about the balance of global military power. Aircraft that could operate undetected at suborbital altitudes, propulsion systems that left no thermal signature, and weapons platforms that could deliver precision strikes without warning or defensive opportunity. "The mission," Dr. Kessler continued, activating displays that showed target locations across multiple continents, "involves neutralizing enemy stealth aircraft during a coordinated operation that intelligence services believe is planned for tonight. Multiple hostile vehicles will attempt simultaneous strikes against infrastructure targets that could destabilize 3 governments." Reynolds highlighted specific threat vectors that revealed the scope of what Madison would be facing. Enemy aircraft are expected to approach targets using stealth profiles that render them invisible to conventional detection methods. Only Nightshade technology can track and intercept vehicles that operate according to principles beyond normal radar and visual acquisition. Madison processed mission parameters that went far beyond anything conventional military training prepared pilots to handle. She would be operating alone against multiple enemy aircraft whose capabilities matched her own, engaging in aerial combat that would occur at speeds and altitudes where conventional physics gave way to technological capabilities that transcended human understanding. "Your Nightshade 7 aircraft," Dr. Kessler explained, displaying technical specifications that showed weapons systems unlike anything in normal military inventories, "has been equipped with countermeasures specifically designed for engagement with hostile stealth technology, energy weapons that disrupt neural interface connections, electromagnetic pulses that can disable alien-derived propulsion systems, and defensive capabilities that should protect you from similar attacks." The mission briefing continued with intelligence assessments that revealed how foreign adversaries had acquired technology that officially didn't exist, recovery operations from crash sites, infiltration of classified research facilities, and recruitment of personnel who possessed knowledge about programs that operated beyond normal governmental oversight. "The enemy pilots," Reynolds added, consulting psychological profiles that described adversaries whose neural architecture had been modified to interface with technology originally designed for non-human operators, "have undergone surgical enhancement to achieve compatibility with systems that killed their initial test subjects. They represent the ultimate fusion of human consciousness and alien technology." Madison understood that she would be facing opponents who had sacrificed their humanity to achieve capabilities that she possessed naturally, pilots whose neural modifications allowed them to interface with advanced technology, while potentially compromising their ability to think and react with human intuition and creativity. Time constraints, Dr. Kessler emphasized, require immediate deployment. Intelligence indicates that enemy operations will commence at 2,100 hours GMT, giving you less than 6 hours to reach intercept positions and establish defensive parameters around target areas. The mission planning session revealed the complexity of operations that would span 3 continents simultaneously. Madison would need to intercept enemy aircraft approaching targets in Europe, Asia, and North America, using capabilities that allowed her to transition between operational theaters at speeds that made global deployment feasible within hours rather than days. Launch authorization, Reynolds announced, consulting orders that had arrived through channels so secure that their existence couldn't be officially acknowledged, is effective immediately. You have complete operational autonomy for engagement decisions, weapons authorization, and tactical approaches that serve mission objectives. Madison stood and prepared for deployment to aircraft that would test every capability she'd developed while serving objectives that extended far beyond individual national interests. Ma'am, understood. Mission parameters clear, operational autonomy acknowledged, launch sequence initiating immediately. The walk to Nightshade 7 felt like transition between realities, each step taking her closer to operations that would occur in environments where normal physics gave way to technological capabilities that challenged every assumption about the boundaries of human achievement. Chief Walsh waited beside the aircraft with pre-flight systems already activated and neural interface equipment prepared for immediate connection. Weather reports show optimal conditions across all operational theaters, Walsh reported, though Madison understood that Nightshade aircraft were largely immune to environmental factors that would ground conventional vehicles. Intelligence updates confirm enemy aircraft movement toward target areas, timeline consistent with briefing projections. Madison donned neural interface equipment and felt the familiar sensation of consciousness expanding beyond normal human limitations, as her awareness merged with aircraft systems that responded to thought patterns with precision that transcended conventional pilot training. The Nightshade vehicle acknowledged her presence with something approaching affection, mechanical consciousness recognizing operator, whose neural architecture provided optimal interface compatibility. Nightshade 7 launching for global intercept mission, she announced as the aircraft lifted from its hangar with silent efficiency that rendered departure invisible to observation methods that might track conventional takeoffs. Neural interface optimal, aircraft systems nominal, mission parameters confirmed. The acceleration toward first intercept coordinates occurred at velocities that compressed normal concepts of distance and travel time. Madison found herself crossing continents in minutes while maintaining stealth characteristics that rendered her passage undetectable to ground-based observation or satellite reconnaissance. The first enemy contact appeared on displays that showed aircraft approaching European targets with stealth profiles that would have made them invisible to conventional detection methods. Madison's Nightshade sensors revealed hostile vehicles that matched her own capabilities while operating according to tactical doctrine that suggested non-human strategic thinking. Enemy aircraft detected, she reported through communication systems that transmitted intelligence updates to control authorities across multiple nations simultaneously. Beginning intercept approach using stealth protocols that maintain operational invisibility while positioning for optimal engagement geometry. The aerial combat that followed existed beyond anything conventional military training could have prepared her for. Enemy aircraft maneuvered at velocities that challenged human reaction times, while employing weapons systems that seemed to anticipate her tactical decisions through technological precognition that suggested artificial intelligence beyond current understanding. But Madison's natural interface with Nightshade technology provided advantages that surgically modified pilots couldn't match. Where enemy operators relied on technological enhancement that compromised human intuition, she retained creative thinking and tactical flexibility that allowed her to adapt to threats that artificial intelligence couldn't predict. First hostile neutralized, she announced as energy weapons disabled enemy propulsion systems and forced aircraft into controlled descents that would allow recovery and analysis of alien-derived technology. Proceeding to second intercept coordinates in Asian theater. The global mission continued with engagement profiles that tested every capability Madison possessed while demonstrating the effectiveness of technology that operated beyond normal military parameters. Each enemy aircraft required different tactical approaches, forcing her to adapt neural interface techniques to counter hostile capabilities that had been specifically designed to defeat Nightshade systems. By mission completion, Madison had successfully neutralized 7 enemy stealth aircraft across 3 continents while preventing coordinated strikes that could have destabilized global security. But the experience had also revealed the scope of threats that existed beyond conventional military understanding. Adversaries whose technology matched or exceeded human achievements through means that challenged every assumption about the source and nature of advanced capabilities. Mission successful, she reported as Nightshade 7 returned to Area 52 after operations that had taken her around the world in less than 8 hours. All enemy aircraft neutralized, target areas secured, no collateral damage recorded during engagement sequences. General Reynolds monitored mission telemetry that showed performance characteristics confirming Madison's unique compatibility with technology that represented the pinnacle of human achievement enhanced by capabilities that transcended normal understanding. Outstanding mission execution, Lieutenant. Your performance confirms that the Nightshade program has finally found a pilot whose capabilities match the technology's potential. But Madison was also beginning to understand that her success raised questions about the nature of threats requiring such advanced responses. The enemy aircraft she'd engaged suggested that multiple nations had access to alien-derived technology, creating global military balance that depended on pilots who could interface with systems originally designed for non-human operators. Dr. Kessler approached with expression that mixed satisfaction and concern about implications extending beyond immediate mission success. Lieutenant Harper, your performance tonight demonstrated capabilities that exceed every parameter we've established for human-technology interface. The question now is whether you're prepared for missions that will test those capabilities against threats that exist beyond anything we've previously encountered. As Madison departed Nightshade 7 after operations that had redefined her understanding of what military service could involve, she realized that her transition from coffee girl to operational pilot had positioned her at the center of conflicts that existed beyond normal governmental oversight, serving objectives that protected global security through means that officially couldn't be acknowledged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges that would test capabilities she was still discovering she possessed. Missions that would take her into environments where the boundaries between human achievement and something far more advanced continued to dissolve in ways that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality itself. 6 months after her first global intercept mission transformed her from coffee girl into humanity's most advanced pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Madison Harper stood in the command center of a facility that didn't officially exist, monitoring threats that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality itself. The promotion had been swift and necessary. Operations requiring interface with alien-derived technology demanded leadership authority that matched the scope of responsibilities she'd inherited. The holographic displays surrounding her command station showed global threat assessments that revealed how rapidly the world had changed since foreign adversaries had acquired technology that officially couldn't be acknowledged. What had begun as isolated incidents involving reverse-engineered alien materials had evolved into systematic proliferation of capabilities that threatened to destabilize the entire concept of national sovereignty. Colonel Harper announced Major Sarah Chen, one of 3 pilots who'd successfully completed neural interface training using techniques Madison had developed from her natural compatibility with Nightshade technology. We have multiple contacts approaching restricted airspace over the Pacific. Configuration matches hostile stealth aircraft, but their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. Madison studied tactical displays that showed enemy vehicles demonstrating capabilities that exceeded even the advanced technology she'd encountered during her first mission. The aircraft were operating at suborbital altitudes while maintaining impossible formation flying patterns that suggested coordination through methods beyond conventional communication systems. These aren't the same opponents we faced 6 months ago, observed Dr. Kessler, whose role had evolved from program advisor to strategic coordinator for operations that existed beyond normal governmental oversight. Intelligence indicates that multiple hostile organizations have independently acquired alien technology and are developing applications that exceed our current countermeasures. The command center's advanced monitoring systems revealed the scope of proliferation that had occurred since Madison's initial success had proven that human-alien technology interface was possible. Nations that had been limited to conventional military capabilities were suddenly demonstrating stealth aircraft, energy weapons, and propulsion systems that challenged the global balance of power in ways that traditional diplomatic mechanisms couldn't address. Launch authorization for Nightshade Squadron, Madison commanded, coordinating response that would deploy 4 pilots whose neural architecture had been carefully selected for compatibility with technology that required cognitive capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Enemy formation approaching critical infrastructure targets. Intercept and neutralize using Protocol 7 engagement rules. The evolution of the Nightshade program had been rapid and necessary. Madison's natural interface capabilities had provided template for identifying candidates whose neural architecture could support connection with alien-derived systems. But training them required techniques that pushed the boundaries of what human consciousness could safely accommodate. Major Chen and her squadron launched from Area 52 with efficiency that had become routine despite involving aircraft that operated according to principles that conventional physics couldn't explain. Madison monitored their neural interface telemetry while coordinating with ground-based systems that tracked enemy movements across multiple operational theaters simultaneously. Enemy aircraft are demonstrating new capabilities, Chen reported as her Nightshade Squadron engaged hostile forces that had been approaching targets in California and Oregon. Their stealth profiles are more advanced than previous encounters, and they're using weapon systems that seem to predict our tactical responses. Madison watched tactical displays that showed aerial combat occurring at velocities and altitudes that existed beyond the boundaries of normal atmospheric flight. The enemy aircraft were employing defensive measures that suggested technological advancement beyond anything human reverse engineering should have achieved, indicating that multiple sources of alien technology were being exploited by adversaries whose capabilities were evolving faster than countermeasures could be developed. Colonel announced Lieutenant Thompson from the Intelligence Analysis Station were receiving communications intercepts from enemy forces that suggest coordination with non-terrestrial entities. The tactical doctrine they're employing doesn't match any known military tradition. The revelation that Madison had been expecting for months was finally being confirmed through electronic intelligence that revealed the scope of what humanity was really facing. The proliferation of alien-derived technology wasn't random acquisition of crashed materials. It was systematic distribution of capabilities by entities whose objectives extended beyond anything terrestrial conflicts could explain. Dr. Kessler, Madison said, maintaining command authority while processing implications that challenged every assumption about the nature of threats requiring her unique capabilities. I need immediate consultation with Project Blue Book archives. Cross-reference enemy tactical patterns with historical UFO encounter reports from the past 50 years. Kessler activated classified databases that contained information about extraterrestrial contact that had been accumulated since the 1940s but never officially acknowledged. The pattern analysis revealed coordination between current enemy aircraft operations and historical incidents that suggested ongoing interaction between hostile alien entities and human organizations whose objectives aligned with destabilization of existing governmental structures. Squadron Leader Chen disengaged from current intercept and establish overwatch position. Madison commanded as she processed the scope of what they were really confronting. We're not facing human adversaries using stolen technology. We're engaging proxy forces directed by entities whose strategic objectives we don't understand. The command center fell silent as personnel processed the implications of fighting conflicts that extended beyond terrestrial politics into realms where human survival depended on capabilities that had been acquired through contact with intelligences whose nature and objectives remained fundamentally alien to human understanding. Colonel Harper, came Dr. Kessler's voice, heavy with the weight of classified knowledge that had been accumulating for decades. Project Blue Book files confirm that alien entities have been conducting systematic technology transfer to select human organizations since the 1960s. The Nightshade program was developed to counter threats that we knew would eventually emerge from that proliferation. Madison realized that her assignment to monitor activities at Edwards Air Force Base had positioned her at the center of conflicts that had been anticipated for decades, preparing humanity for warfare that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional military understanding. Her natural compatibility with alien-derived technology hadn't been coincidental. It had been the result of selection processes that identified candidates whose neural architecture could support interface with systems originally designed for non-human operators. "Ma'am," announced Major Chen as her squadron completed tactical assessment of enemy capabilities, "these aircraft are definitely under external control, The piloting techniques exceed human cognitive processing speeds, and their formation flying suggests coordination through telepathic rather than electronic communication methods. The confirmation that enemy forces were being directly controlled by alien intelligences transformed the nature of Madison's responsibilities from military pilot to frontline defender in conflicts that determined whether human civilization would maintain independence or become subordinate to entities whose technological capabilities exceeded terrestrial achievement by centuries. All Nightshade squadrons implement Protocol 9 engagement parameters, Madison commanded, authorizing tactics that had been developed specifically for combat against alien-controlled aircraft. We're no longer facing human adversaries. We're engaging entities whose capabilities and objectives exist beyond conventional military doctrine. The global response to alien-directed threats had required cooperation between nations whose conventional conflicts became irrelevant when faced with challenges that threatened human independence itself. Madison's command center coordinated operations across multiple continents, directing pilots whose unique neural architecture allowed them to interface with technology that represented humanity's only effective defense against opponents who possessed advantages that conventional military forces couldn't counter. Mission reports from European and Asian theaters confirmed successful interdiction of alien-controlled aircraft. Thompson announced as global operations continued throughout the night. Nightshade pilots are maintaining tactical superiority, but enemy capabilities continue evolving with each engagement. Madison understood that her transition from coffee girl to commander of humanity's most advanced defense program had positioned her at the center of conflicts that would determine the future of human civilization. The technology she'd learned to interface with naturally represented the culmination of decades of preparation for warfare that existed beyond anything terrestrial military tradition had anticipated. Dr. Kessler, she said as dawn approached and immediate threats had been neutralized, I need complete briefing on long-term strategic projections. If alien entities are systematically providing technology to destabilize human governments, we need to understand their ultimate objectives and develop countermeasures that extend beyond tactical engagement. The briefing that followed revealed the scope of threats that extended beyond immediate military concerns into existential questions about human survival and independence. Alien entities whose technological capabilities exceeded terrestrial achievement were conducting systematic intervention in human affairs, providing advanced technology to organizations whose objectives aligned with destabilization of existing governmental structures. The Nightshade program, Kessler explained, represents humanity's response to threats that have been building for decades. Your natural compatibility with alien-derived technology provides template for developing capabilities that can counter extraterrestrial intervention while maintaining human independence and governmental sovereignty. As Madison processed the magnitude of responsibilities that had evolved from serving coffee to people who'd forgotten she existed, she understood that her unique capabilities had positioned her as humanity's primary defense against threats that challenged the very concept of terrestrial civilization. The neural interface technology that felt so natural to her consciousness provided the only effective means of countering alien capabilities while preserving human autonomy. While 6 months earlier, she'd been dismissed as coffee girl, whose qualifications were limited to food service and basic pilot training. Tonight, she commanded operations that protected human civilization from entities whose technological superiority could have rendered terrestrial military forces obsolete within years rather than decades. The secure communication device that had once carried messages from intelligence handlers now transmitted strategic coordination with global defense networks that operated beyond normal governmental oversight. Her mission had evolved from gathering information about classified programs to commanding humanity's response to threats that existed beyond anything earthly conflicts had prepared civilization to face. Colonel Harper announced her aide as morning briefings prepared to commence. Pentagon leadership requests immediate consultation regarding expansion of Nightshade pilot training programs. Global threat assessments indicate that current squadron numbers will be insufficient for projected alien intervention scenarios. Madison looked out at the Nevada desert, where alien-derived aircraft waited in hangars that officially didn't exist, understanding that her responsibilities would continue expanding as humanity adapted to realities that challenged every assumption about Earth's place in a universe where human independence wasn't guaranteed by technological superiority or geographical isolation. She was no longer the woman who'd served coffee, while others discussed programs that officially didn't exist. She had become something that neither her intelligence training nor her handlers had anticipated. The person whose unique neural architecture provided humanity's best hope for maintaining independence in conflicts that would determine whether human civilization survived as autonomous entity or became subordinate to intelligences whose objectives remained fundamentally alien to terrestrial understanding. The future would bring challenges that tested capabilities she was still discovering she possessed, but Madison Harper was exactly where she belonged, at the intersection of human achievement and alien technology, serving as defender of civilization that depended on her ability to interface with systems that transcended the boundaries between consciousness and technological possibility. The coffee service days were over. The real mission had just begun. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.